everybody knows who follows me that I'm a big believer in holistic approaches. Mind, body, soul, spirit, it's all connected. And one of the bones that I pick with our current healthcare system is that I find it's very narrow. We're really focused on physical care. Everything is about curative approaches, and there is absolutely a time and a place for those things. I'm not at all knocking that that's not an important aspect of our health, our physical health, obviously. But there's a big connection between our physical health and our emotional health and our spiritual health. And I really firmly believe that we could not we should not be focusing on one and neglecting the others. And in fact, we should have the same resources and interventions available for all of us, all of our being, not just our physical being. I talk about that a lot in my book. And today I'm looking forward to talking to a doula, Beverley Shiels, who's here with me. A doula is a profession that I think a lot of people don't know about, and I'd like to clear up any misconceptions there might be about a doula and just really explain what that process is. Because for me, a doula can be a really essential piece of any caregiving team, because doulas really journey alongside a person. They provide that emotional and spiritual support, and that's really what they're focused on, not the physical care. So it's a really nice thing to add in terms of care. So hi, Beverley, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So Beverley, let me just explain or give a bit of your background. Beverley is a certified elder care and end of life doula. So she provides non-medical, and we're going to emphasize that this is an unregulated field. This is a non-medical practice, and she provides emotional supports to seniors, the terminally ill, the dying, and also their families. Her mission is to encourage those she serves to live life to the fullest as she supports them in facing any fears related to declining health, isolation, loss of independence, or death with compassion, education, and advocacy. So Beverley has a lot of those conversations that a lot of people run away from, a lot of the difficult conversations. So Beverley, in your experience, explain to me your role, what is a doula, and then add to that, what are some of the misconceptions about what it is that you do?
Wow, yes, a doula, as you said, is somebody who journeys alongside the individual, but not only the individual, the family. We're a connection, we become a relationship, we're entwined in daily living. And um, as I say, I support the entire family to come to terms with whatever's going on. As a senior, as an example, it's about living life to the fullest and respecting the family that are working or taking care of children. And at end of life, it kind of, goes along. In as far as misconceptions about what we do, so let's use the word end of life. It's like sometimes people think that we're medical assistants in dying, and we're not. We are totally non-medical. We are there to support the family through practical, emotional, and spiritual things, as we mentioned before, as you mentioned.
Okay, so what are, I will get into your training. That's something that I want to get to, the certification that you've gone through. So we will get to that for any of you out there who have those questions. We're going to get there. But just describe to me some of the situations in which you're involved with the family. I know, in our conversations before today's interview, you talked about, of course, death and dying, working with someone who had HIV. You talked about working with someone who had been in prison before. So what are the typical situations in which you're called in?
Okay, so from the elder care side, I would be somebody who sometimes the family is employing me to say, we really need some help with mom and dad. Uh, they've got dementia, they're in a home, we can't be there 24/7. We'd like you to go in and sit with them. And so I'm eyes and ears and presence to that person. So as an example, somebody with dementia who's really declining, sometimes they're strapped in a chair, they have little movement, they're just staring into space sometimes. I am just somebody who's present to them. I may hold their hand, I may read to them, chit chat, interconnect with some of the other people in the room, just to bring about social aspects. So, as an example, a gentleman that I had the honor of working with and his family, the nurses said, wow, he recognizes you, even though he may not always know your name. He connects with you at a heart level. He smiles, his eyes light up. The time that you're with him, it's just amazing. He's like a whole different person. And sometimes there's moments of lucidity and connection. It's just so exciting to see. And yeah, that is such an honor. And then there's times, as an example, where I could be working in somebody's home. And so I had one client who had life limiting conditions herself. She couldn't take care of herself, but she had a mother at home who had dementia. So in that scenario, I did a lot of practical things. I was kind of switched between mother and daughter. And the mother, as an example, would lay in her bed. I could read to her. I could just sit with her. She was a very religious person, so I could bring her religion to her through videos and so forth, to leave the daughter to herself and deal with the things that she had to. I also helped them prepare for the future. So in the situation with the daughter, what if she died first? What
Who
is
was going
going
to
to
take care
happen?
of her mother?
Who
Yeah.
is going to take care of her mom? What is the emergency procedure? Who's checking in? Now, she had a mixture of um, the Alberta Health Services coming in for her mom, but she had private support through myself. So I'm not part of the healthcare system. I come in as private practice. So the family hires me.
So let me stop you because there's a couple of things that are rolling around in my mind. One, I want to talk about when you were doing this more practical support and talk about that in comparison to other professionals. But I want to jump back when you talked about sitting with someone who was pretty non-responsive and you were just present. And Beverly, it brings me pleasure to hear this because I hear individuals, caregivers, healthcare professionals, well, they're not responding. They don't know I'm there. They don't remember I'm there. And I get all of that. And when you're strapped for time as a professional or as a caregiver, it makes sense. If you feel like the person's not engaging with you, then what's the point? But you're speaking to there is a point. There's just as strong as a point. Is that almost like on an energetic level, almost we
Yes.
can feel when someone is with us and sitting and holding a hand and reading or listening to music, massaging hands, aromatherapy. I mean, all these little things that we can do show the person that they are not alone. And I love that your role can provide that because a lot of family members, they need to do, like they're antsy with what's going on. I'm sure I'd be the same way. Well, what can I do? Where are my tasks? And I find it very hard personally to just sit still. So that would be hard for me. That's why it's nice that there's someone like you as well who can kind of just be a person to just sit still in silence and be comfortable with that.
Absolutely. And it's so, um, my heart sings almost when that person with dementia comes alive for that moment and speaks to you where they were nonverbal before. And one gentleman, I'd said to him, like, I am also a Reiki practitioner, and, just hold his hand and, send the Reiki energy to him. And for him to literally, it's almost like he comes out of a trance and he's alive and can speak audible, understandable sentences. It may only be for moments of time, and to say, I'm here for you. I'm enjoying our company, and I know you didn't sign up for this. When you were sitting in your chair, it must be so frustrating, and for them to respond, it is. It really is, and yeah, it's just lovely to see the spark come in, but
Yeah.
also for the family. So the difference between a doula and, I'm going to say, some of the other professions that are out there
Yeah, and can you
is,
make sure to cover companion? Because I want to compare the difference between a doula and a companion. So expand on
yes.
this.
So most people would say it's the same, but I would say no. I would say it's the relationship. The relationship is different in the background. So somebody like myself who has certified, who's learning, growing in all things, and I'm not saying companions don't, but it's things that I can bring to the table to expand. So I have some understanding of some of the things that go on in the medical environment, to be aware that something's not right, to bring attention, to have such trust from the families, because I almost kind of become like a member of the family, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
consistent. You connect because I'm not task orientated. I am not there to do specific things. I am there to be present. And what needs to happen happens in the moment. It's organic, it's holistic. So those interactions is what makes, in my opinion, different a doula in comparison to just a companion. So
Okay.
I am called into this profession, and most
Mm,
doulas will tell you they are called, they are answering a call. And we're alive. We're not like, oh, 10 minutes, I gotta go on to the next client. We don't have as many clients because we dedicate and focus on the families that we serve.
that's beautiful. We have a couple comments, Beverly, and I want to take that. Shelley just said, very well said. Thank you, Sue. Sue is saying, thanking me for providing informative guests and helpful information. Thanks, Sue. And Brian said, as a person living with Alzheimer's and vascular dementia, I'm all for a death doula. It's our life, and we should be able to pass from this world in the way we want. It is something I will have it in writing so there is no discussion, and in case my wife is not available. That's great. Oh my God, Brian, that's so wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
and good for you for taking control of your journey with
Yes.
Alzheimer's and vascular dementia and putting stuff in writing, which is super important. So that's really great, Brian. And there's so much value to what you're saying you do. Now, when you started to talk about, Beverly, the practical support, like helping people plan and be proactive and such. So now you're starting to move into what I consider lots of things we do as social workers, right? And that stuff. So talk to me a bit about your training. And then I really want to distinguish what it is that you've learned and your own, because I know you don't have, professional orders where you mandated continuing education, where where you have ethical codes and professional codes where people could make complaints and hold you accountable like I do as a social worker. So I want to talk about the training that you got, and then how you in that training know when it's beyond what you can do as a non-medical professional, and how you can identify to refer out to someone with a clinical background.
Sure. So, as you said, at least a doula will sit down with the family and just talk about things in general. What are your wishes? Have you considered that? Have you considered this? As an example, when would you want to be on a ventilator? Because there's all under COVID. There's all kinds of reasons why you should or should not. Depending on whatever. So having those conversations, encouraging the family, the individual to talk with their family members, because documenting is wonderful, but when families don't understand why you're making those decisions, it still is a challenge. They may want to say, well, I'm speaking on your behalf, you've assigned me to do that, but you know what, I really don't think that that's the right thing to do. They can speak on your behalf, right? But when they understand why you're making the decisions, or why your loved one is saying, no, I want you to do all things for like, please resuscitate, please go on a venter, I don't want you to leave, and understand those concepts together holistically, you can come to a place, I'm going to use the word consensus, but understanding. And it makes it so much easier, especially when it's not a crisis.
Oh my God,
Because,
Beverly, you're like preaching to the choir here, because I talk about this a lot, and I dedicated a chapter in my book to it. Actually, is yes, putting your wishes in writing is essential, and I definitely encourage people to do that. But without having the conversations to support whatever it is in writing, your family can still be thrown into turmoil. They can feel guilt about the decisions that you've made. It can create family conflict. It can
mhm,
create confusion, anger, resentment, all of these things. And so having these discussions before is really important. get into, tell me though a bit about your training, because you're not a clinician. So what training did you have, and what are your limits?
So to be a doula, it's non-regulated. And in fact, you don't have to have any kinds of certifications.
So I could call
People,
myself a doula right now if I
you
wanted.
could, you
Mm,
could, you
okay.
could. For myself, I wanted to, so I believe in the role of a doula, it is a calling. And usually your life skills all come into playing. You're a natural coach. People come to you, you listen, you advocate, you support, right? That's kind of personality types. But for me, I wanted to get training because the first thing that especially professionals, medical professionals will say is, what makes you qualified to be a doula? And so I can say, I've taken this training, I've researched all the training out of there, out around the globe, because it's a global movement. And this is what I have done. I've took training from a nurse, a palliative care and oncology nurse from out of the States. It was online training. I've taken training from Douglas College out of BC. They have a program there for end-of-life doulas. Um, I've taken some training out of the Australia. I've taken training, well, around the globe, right? So it's bringing all of these things because it's holistic. It's not medical. It's supporting families. Then for myself in the States, they have, and we do have an association here in Canada for the end of life doulas. And they're great. We're educating. They have requirements. So things like security clearance through the police departments, that you've not got a criminal record, things like that. I chose to go to the National End of Life Doula Alliance out of the States, and they're quite organized, and they worked with the National End of Life Doula Council in the hospice environment. So
Okay.
they've set standards, scope of practice. There's all kinds of things in place. You take an exam, and those
Oh,
that pass the exam are called NEDA proficient. And in the States, those people would be hired by hospices. They feel there's a level, a standard there,
wonderful.
right? So
Okay.
that's in the States.
So that's an important point to make, is that, there's a term that's thrown out a lot that I see where people say, I'm an advocate. So, okay, so yes, you have your life skills, who you are, which I think makes you a good candidate for different sorts of work. And so you can say, yes, I'm an advocate, but did you take any training to back that up? Because to me, and I'm glad to hear the level of training that you have, and I would encourage people, if they're looking for a doula, to look for someone who has some level of certification, because for me, the scary part of unregulated and uncertified um, professions, I'll say, or I don't even know if the term profession is right, if people haven't had any training, if you can say that, behind you, is that then how do you identify when it's beyond your scope? Because I think it's important within training to understand what your limitations are. Just even as a clinical social worker, I know what my limitations are, and I know when I'm supposed to refer out to somebody else. That's part of my responsibility. So I'm really happy to hear that you, in particular, and that there is this movement out there certifying and training people, because I think it's more protective for the public. Before I get to you answering the question is, how do you know when to refer out? Just a couple more comments came in, Beverly. The name of my book, Sue is asking, is Planned for Aging Well. You can find it on Amazon. She asked me. And Brian said, oh, this is so smart. He'll also have a video stating his wishes as well as
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
writing. He said, family members may feel guilt, but it is my life. Many of my dementia friends feel the same. That's
Mhm.
great. Making a video. I mean, yeah, I mean, now you can just make one on your phone, right? So like
Right. Yeah.
that's a great idea, Brian. So talk to
Right.
me, Beverly, is how do you know when it's beyond your scope? How would you know to say to the family, look, I really think you should call a social worker in. I think you should call in an occupational therapist, a physio. How do you know? How did you get training on how to identify, or how do you know when to do that when it's beyond your scope?
So I wanted to backtrack there. So I did talk
Sure.
about the states there, but in Canada we have the End of Life Doula Association of
Mhm.
Canada that and a lot of those are out of BC, unconnected to Douglas College. So that training there. So in that training, they bring forward those kinds of things. They make so there is a scope of practice and code of ethics and all those things through the Doula Association of Canada here. So they
Right.
have a website, and the doulas that are part of that association are listed on that website.
Awesome. Okay.
In as far as how do you determine? Well, obviously, some of us are not. Sorry, I'll go back. There are social workers that choose to go into the end of life doula work. There
Mhm.
are chaplains. There are nurses, registered nurses, right? But in the role of a doula, you are non-medical. That hat is to the side. And so just in general, right, you know it's beyond your scope, so you refer. As an example, if I was to talk about some of the bringing in resources, over time I'll have that experience, have that connection based on the individual people that I'm working with. But again, you make that network, you reach out into the community. In Alberta, in my community, we have a local primary care network for things such as that. That's where I would be referring people to, because in that network, the medicalized system is where all those components are. Same
Yeah.
as a lawyer, right? When we're talking about advanced planning, care planning, and things, I personally am not going to be involved in that. I'm going to refer them. We're having a conversation. I'm preparing them to go to the professionals when they need help. Just like
That's
I'm not
great.
a counselor, right? I journey alongside in the grief part. But when it becomes more complicated grief, or it's beyond, you know, the conversations that I'm having, I'd be referring out, because that is not within my scope.
That's great to hear, and I think it's all of our responsibilities, no matter what profession we're in, is to work within our limits. I mean, just because I'm a clinical social worker and have a license doesn't mean that am capable of intervening in every situation. And people do reach out to me, oh, I have this whatever, my brother has a drug problem. What should I do? Well, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
an addictions specialist, so I don't know. Let me find a name for you of someone, you know?
Exactly.
So I'm really glad to hear that, Beverly. I think it's great. And I think that having the association does give you some level of accountability to this association. It also creates a
Yes.
network of other doulas that you can go to for support and things like that. And a couple more comments came in, so let me just bring them in. David said, excellent book. Thank you, David. And Brian, who's been engaged throughout this time, said he's also an international dementia advocate. He's going to be writing a
Mm-hmm.
blog, so that's nice. So
Excellent.
Laurel said the conversation's fantastic. She's been working as a birth doula for over 10
Mm-hmm.
years, but have been training as an elder care support person and advocate for about a year and a half. And a lot of her birth work has prepared her for caregiving and
Mm-hmm.
advocacy role, but still learning the ins and outs. Her question is, are doctors and medical practitioners open to the idea of elder support doulas? That is a fantastic question, Laura. It was actually on my list because I know that even as a social worker, some of the suggestions I make to a medical team, they look at me like, excuse me, when I might say something to the patient like, have you ever thought about Reiki? And the doctors sometimes are like, excuse me? I'm like, well, why not? You know, there's a million different types of interventions. Why don't we go broad and try everything holistically? What's been your experience, Beverly? Have the medical practitioners that are surrounding the patient and the family with whom you're working, are they open to your presence, or did they find it unnecessary?
Yeah, I don't find them to be open. The ones that know me personally, yes, right, because they have the relationship with me. But outside of that, no. So it is disappointing. I was on a call for MAID at one point, and was a doctor was speaking, and I said, "Would you be open to as an end of life doula being there, taking the journey in there?" And they're like, "Yeah, I guess." But no, the the people that I've seen to be most open, again, is those when they see you working in the medical environment. So as an example, I worked with somebody in hospice in a medical facility, And the aides, the RNs that were there said, oh my goodness, we should have someone like you on staff 24/7. Every person deserves at end of life to have a doula. We see the positive difference it makes. The social workers, the chaplains were also on board. Nothing came of it.
That's
Now,
too bad. That's disappointing to me. And I find like our healthcare system has such a long way to go in terms of looking at other types of really, really valuable supports and interventions that we can be providing for people. And it's almost like they don't get on board until they experience it themselves
yes.
personally, almost even within their own family before they're like,
Mhm.
aha, oh, I see how this works. I personally think that a lot of it is because in the medical world, it's very curative based. We're always looking to heal and cure. So, healing as it's linked to curing versus healing as it's linked to for something like healing can be letting go of regret and remorse from the past.
Mhm.
That's a form of healing too. Healing our fears about death and what's going to happen to us and our family after we die. That's a part of healing too. But I think in the medical world, healing equals cure. And so for me, that's what it seems like, a lot of the education work we can do. Are
Yeah.
the associations like trying to work with, the medical colleges and things like that to provide education about what you do?
They're trying. They're trying. We're also like doulas across Canada are starting to kind of make little. I don't want to use the word associations, but communities together. So, like in Alberta, we do. In Ontario, they do. The doulas are coming together, and we're hoping that maybe if we come together and be a voice with our MPs and doctors and presentations, that maybe we can bring light. A lot of times, like I found some of the speaking engagements that I've had, as soon as you say, usually like it's the end of life doula part that we kind of promote, but if they're afraid, as soon as you say end of life death doula, it's like they're scared they're going to die if they talk about those kinds of things. And from the elder care side and even the end of life side, I'm hoping that insurance companies will get
Mhm.
on board and provide for their healthcare spending accounts, because
Yeah,
to corporations, when a worker is pulled between young children and their aging parents, or it doesn't even have to be somebody aging, it's somebody with a life limiting condition, if they had that financial support to help, they can focus at work because the connection and the relationship that they've made with their doula allows them to disengage while they're at work, because they know they can trust the person in the home, because we're not there for 10 minutes, we're not there for task orientated things, we're there to holistically support and bring life into a day for
yeah,
everybody, and that's the difference. One of my clients, her mother had died the year before, and then I was the doula for her father, and she had said it was amazing the difference it made having me there to support her, the
yeah,
family. Her grieving process was, and it's not to put time limits on it or anything like that on it, but it was different because of how we approached the looming death. And this was a year-long journey, so it wasn't like five
yeah,
minutes or anything like that. It's, the relationship. So I'm hoping that as we come together, we can advocate for insurance companies, corporations to embrace these things for people's aging parents at home with dementia,
yeah,
and not being called out. One of my clients does have dementia and Parkinson's, and um, her daughter employs me to come along, and we have so much fun. The mom looks forward to me coming. We do practical things, we do social things, it gives her the independence that she's
yeah,
looking for. And for her daughter, when she comes in, she's not coming in and doing the washing or, cleaning, dusting, whatever. Their time together is fun,
yeah.
you know?
It's about their daughter mother relationship. And the
Yes.
thing that I love that you're describing that you do is you're giving space for the feelings to take
Yes.
place. And that's where what we don't do with these very difficult situations. We are afraid universally in North America of death, of dying, of aging. Everyone turns away and they don't want to have the conversations. They don't want to face it. They don't want to live in it, and they do everything they can to avoid it, like, everything. So what you're talking about is providing a space, a non-judged space for people to share their experiences and their feelings. To go back to what you were saying before about when you present yourself saying end of life doula, to me, this is like a straight up branding problem. Like there needs to be a different branding, a different name associated with doula. A doula, okay, but the end of life, like it's almost like a branding challenge. Like your organization should, get connected to a PR firm and find a different way to say what it is you do, because it matters. The words that we use to describe our role and name our role will make a difference in how people perceive us and if they're going to open themselves up. So to me, like it's a branding problem. Um, I want to be able to just wrap it up a bit. When you were talking about the insurance and stuff, is there any, again, advocating it within your organization, trying to go to insurance companies to add you guys on as a payable resource?
For myself personally, an insurance company reached out to me based on a webinar that I was on and asked me if I would be interested. Nothing's come of that at that point. As far as the associations are concerned, I can't speak to that. I'm hoping. I think that, again, like different doulas across the nation are coming together at the provincial levels to try and bring about this awareness and make connections wherever. Even the funeral homes, don't want to talk with us and
Mhm.
work together, whereas it's a natural thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
And
too
and
bad.
and I wanted to say that, in as far as wanting to be, as much as we want to be in the medical institutions and working in partnership, um, we also at the same time don't want to be boxed in by becoming another layer of,
Mm,
I got to do a report, like I've got 10 minutes to be with this person. Like, once you're in those environments, you're working towards in the same manner. So you become another layer.
absolutely.
So for us, we see ourselves as private practice, and we're filling in the gaps to complement the medical system. We're there to not to challenge, not to um, be of hindrance. We're there to support. We're that gap so that when the medical system is not there, we're there to keep people feeling reassured, safe, nurtured, educated, and work in tandem with these people. So again, it's all about relationships. So when we call ourselves end of life or death doulas, we want to face what it is that we're doing. So not trying to brand, because we want to connect at the relationship level. And from start to end, we have connection with medical system, we have with lawyers, with social workers, with chaplains, with the funeral homes, with the mourning process. It's the journey. It's the whole journey with the person.
Yeah.
So that's why it's kind of flip flop, like, should we be in medical system? Shouldn't we?
No, but you're
You
making a
know,
valid point, because I mean, I'm a private social worker and I don't want to work in the system, even though that's where most social workers do work, because they get, bogged down with all of the procedures and the process and the paperwork, blah, blah, blah. So I totally get that. Not to mention that, if a patient wants to feel like they have a really safe space, but they're concerned that you're part of this medical team. And so how safe really is my space to open up with
mm,
you? So I get that. In terms of the branding, I totally hear what you're saying. And I think we should be able to say out loud, I'm dying. My mom is dying. Just like we say she passed away. No, she
right,
died. There's a word to passed away. We say that to ease what it experienced. I
right.
agree with you. But that's like over this. Well, let me look in the over at this end, and we're all the way like over here. So maybe we need a branding shift for a while before we get to the
Yes.
place of
Yeah.
death and dying. Is there any, before we finish off, is there any last thing you want to say, and how can people get a hold of you, Beverley?
Oh, well, I'm open to chat with anybody. They can go to my website, which is courageousgoodbyes.com. And all of my contact information is on there. I'm on Facebook. I'm happy to take phone calls, 780-910-3496. I'm in just outside of Edmonton in a community called St. Albert. Yes, I'm happy to, I get excited about end of life, not because somebody is coming to end of life, but to the life that you can bring to somebody. One of the gentlemen, a homeless gentleman who had been imprisoned, had all these things happening to him. When he died, and it wasn't just myself, this was in a volunteer capacity with others, he looked healthier when he died and more alive, 10 years younger, through the work that we all did together to bring him life.
Yeah.
And that's what doulas want to do, whether it's at the senior level, whether it's at end of life, and it's to bring life to the entire family, holistically.
Absolutely.
So that's what an end of life doula and senior companion type doula does in our communities across the nation and around the globe.
Well, thank you very much, Beverley. And I encourage everybody to look more into this. You said it's called Courageous Goodbyes, right? Courageousgoodbyes.com. You can get some more information on Beverley. And I appreciate the work that you do. And I understand being excited to do end of life work, not because you're excited people are dying, but because this is a very untapped time in our lifespan where we can do so much incredible internal work on our relationships, on ourselves, let a lot of things go, feel valued, feel comfortable, and have a really nice death experience. And so I see what you're saying, because it's like you're shifting the last part of life, which was when people are oftentimes abandoned. You're saying,
Exactly.
yes, I get to be there and support somebody during this really difficult time. So thanks a lot, Beverley. I'm going to ask you to hang on. I'm going to end the broadcast, but just hang on for a minute. And again, Plan for Aging Well, which you can find on Amazon. And I talk a lot about all the holistic work we need to do for older adults starting now, not when they're at end of life, but now and in addition to. So thanks a lot, Beverley. And
You're
goodbye,
welcome.
everyone.
Thank
Okay,
you.
hang on, Beverley.